next group of speakers is a panel led by our president, Steve, today. And this is a 1-hour panel session, everyone. And once again, you need to get out your pencils and paper and get ready to ask some questions. They're going to describe their experiences, rewards, and their insight as they took Speechcraft into San Quentin. Charles is a life and business coach, a speaker, a facilitator, and social responsibility advocate. He also works in tech and has been a Toastmaster for 8 years, and he supports the Toastmaster mission that helps make people better speakers and better leaders. Our next panelist, Gina, has been a Toastmaster for over 25 years and has enjoyed leadership roles, improving her speech communication in multiple clubs from California to Washington to Wisconsin, where she now resides. She says the growth opportunities and fellowships within the Toastmasters organization keep her engaged and a willing and happy ambassador for Toastmasters. Next panelist, Jerome, has been a Toastmaster since 2015. He's served proudly in roles within and outside of several Toastmasters clubs, and he takes great pride in using the skills he built in Toastmasters to benefit other groups and organizations outside of Toastmasters. Steve has been a Toastmaster since 2008. Many roles he's served in, and he believes that by bringing Toastmasters into the community, like we're doing today, we're talking about, we all can increase the exposure, spread the fun, and do good work for our communities. And last but not least, Tyree, veteran Toastmaster and mentor to all. He's currently the lay leader of the Bay District, California, Nevada United Methodist Annual Conference and the acting pastor of Elmhurst United Methodist Church in East Oakland. Let's welcome our panel, and I turn it over to our panel facilitator, Steve, today.
Thank you, Elaine. It was about the spring of 2019. I received an email from the district director at the time, Diane Ployce. Steve, I just got this inquiry from a Marin County Toastmaster about the possibility of bringing Speechcraft to the inmates. Would you like to take this project on? And I said, that would be fantastic. That would be an interesting experience, and I'd love to do it. The contact was a San Quentin worker named Phil Leonida, and Phil and I started communicating. And we came up with late August 2019 to start our first program in San Quentin. The main part of the communication, we had a lot of verbal communication, we had a lot of written communication, is we had to abide by rules. And it was very important. This is a state prison, and security, as you can imagine, is incredible. Now, some of the rules were about security. Some of the rules were about normal engagement. We had to limit the number of participants. This was a real sought-after program. The incarcerated men of San Quentin really wanted to participate. There were only room for about 10 or 12 for every Speechcraft program. We did the 8-week program. So we'd get the 10 or 12, and then we'd get people that would come in and audit it to hopefully get in the next program. We couldn't bring all our belongings into San Quentin. So we had to leave our cell phones. We had to leave anything that had any communication device we had in our car that was in the San Quentin parking lot. And we had to dress a certain way. We could not wear blue. We could not wear gray. We could not wear orange. And we all did that, and it worked out for us. We all made our way through it. And then as far as interacting with the inmate or incarcerated men, no personal questions. Now, while we weren't asking personal questions, every once in a while, one of the incarcerated gentlemen would mention something in one of their speeches or in table topics or something like that. So we did learn about some of the men, but we were not going to instigate anything. We had a total of 9 people participate, and we've got 5 of us here today. And I'd like to start out with Charles and just ask you, Charles, what made you agree to take part in this program?
I really love the idea because I've been incarcerated in San Quentin State Prison before. And at the time you'd asked me if I could come in and speak there, I had been going back into prisons for probably about 4 years at that point. And San Quentin was the first prison I was incarcerated at. So for me, it was a no-brainer. It was a great opportunity. And thanks for doing it.
You're welcome. And it was a team effort. How about you, Gina? What made you agree to take on the project?
There. Sorry, I was one of those Toastmasters. I felt like I had done quite a few things within the organization, and this was something that I did not see coming. And I thought, wow, what a great challenge and what a great opportunity to serve. I had done a little bit of prison ministry through my women's group on a very, very small scale. And I felt it was sort of a calling. Like there's a reason Steve's asking you. There's something you can share. There are people you can touch. And I felt like that was just a calling. I was meant to do it. And I think you and I were talking about it after the international convention, maybe at a happy hour or something. So you got me at a good time. And I just said, let's go. And I never looked back. I don't think I missed one session that I can recall. I really wanted to make a commitment to be there every week and see the continuity of the program build. And that's what we did see, which was really rewarding. There's so much to talk about, and there's so many of us. So I'll let you keep asking questions. But yeah, it was an amazing opportunity.
All right. Thank you, Gina. How about you, Jerome?
Hi, Steve. Thanks for asking. If anybody remembers back to 2019, 2020, for me, I was at the height of my Toastmasters powers, I think, and it served as an opportunity to use the skills that I had built. But on a more selfish level, those of us that have worn the badge of other people that resemble us in some way and know about the dynamics of the demographics in the prison system. These people were going to come out of prison. They were going to be released someday, and they're going to be peers within my community. And I wanted to have the opportunity to help shape their skill set and their experiences so that they could interact and be in the community in a way that was beneficial, if beneficial at best and not detrimental, and at the worst. There was a selfish motivation there.
All right. How about you, Tyree?
For me, first and foremost, thank you. The main reason was because you asked, Steve. You asked, and that just goes to show what I see as the character of all the core values of Toastmasters. I also echo what I've heard from Charles, because though I haven't, I have close relatives who have been in prison. And like Gina, I also see that as a ministry that all of us, to Jerome's point, all of us are going to be connected no matter where we are. So that it's, believe it or not everybody is a lifer in it, but it will affect your life throughout their steps. So all of those things really made a difference for me. And even to this day, knowing the close relatives that I have who've been in, the experience has marked them for life, regardless of their outlook.
Thanks, Tyree. I'll mention why I went in. If you've known me for a while through Toastmasters, you've probably heard me talk about getting out of my comfort zone. And getting out of a comfort zone can be scary, but that scary or fear could end up being lead to positive things when you go through with it. And I did have a few fears. It was a totally new experience, but I also knew that I grew up in that bubble. I had an idyllic childhood. I always felt safe at home. I always felt safe at school. And if I made a mistake, somehow I always got out of it. Not everybody is so fortunate. And with my experiences in Toastmasters, I could bring what we do with the team, and we all brought our own unique perspectives. And we all feel that we enhanced the lives of the people we worked with, and we got a lot out of it. But I'd like to ask about other fears, and we'll talk with Gina this time. Did you have any fears going in?
Oh, absolutely. I had a lot of fear going in. You know, you see prison riots on TV, right? You know, you see all mayhem breaking loose. We had to get all of our background information to do a background check to make sure we were safe and we weren't going to try to smuggle something in, or I didn't have any connection with anybody there. So I had dreamt a couple times the night before that I was going to be whisked away into a room and never found again, and you know, or something bad would happen. You know, my subconscious was going crazy, but I overcame that fear. And after the first door locked, and then the second door locked, and then we just got deeper and deeper into the bowels. As you come through, kind of like TSA screening, there's a set of that you go through, and then there's another, and then there's this big, huge area, like a kind of like football field size, where there's workout and like track and a baseball diamond and all this kind of cool stuff. And then I just started to breathe. I'm outside, and then we'd go to the next one. And that was just the first time. After that, I didn't have a lot of that anxiety, tension buildup. Plus, we're trying to remember everything we weren't supposed to do. Like, you know, don't look this or that, you know, don't, you know, just try to stay focused, try to stay loose. And once we met the Toastmasters and we got our assignment, we knew who our group was, and we did our first intros and went around and did our very first one we had introduced a partner, and the partner had to introduce us. And I'll never forget this guy. He was so fun and so funny. We just talked, and we really connected on a human level. And once the ice was broken, they call it, you know, an icebreaker for a reason. It was just no looking back. We had standing room only. Everyone wanted to get into this class. It was a special ability to get in. And we saw what a privilege it was and how important this was to the incarcerated group of individuals that were there. And it was something very special. We always talked after on the way home. We debriefed, we prepped really hard. We tried to share, and that's why I don't want to talk too much. We tried to share amongst the group. We all had something of value to bring. And so, yes, I had the fears, but yes, they were overcome. And it was just that feeling. It's sort of like when you go to church and you kind of know what to expect. In Toastmasters, you know what to expect. And so we brought that. And so we knew what to expect week after week. It was really great.
Gina, you did mention something about the fear going in. What if a problem comes up? I remember signing the paper, basically the disclaimer saying, we've got most of this covered, but we can't guarantee, or it was something like that. I don't remember how it worked, but they acknowledged that you never know. And you think about those kind of things. How about you, Jerome?
Fears. I did have, I mean, you have all the general fears, I think, have been mentioned before. The fear that I remember having was I didn't want to be condescending by accident. And I mean, not on purpose either, but there's so much, we've learned a lot in the last few years about how language has harm baked into it, and how our prejudices are kind of baked into our culture in a way. And nowhere is that more prevalent than with incarcerated people. So I didn't want to accidentally let something slip through that unintentionally caused harm. And I tried to take special care. I don't know that I all the way succeeded. I do know that the men that I interacted with were very gracious. If I did do or say something, they let it slide, and they were very grateful. I think to have us there and have us pouring into them. But that was my big takeaway fear. I didn't want to demean them in any way.
Right. I had the exact same fear, and I can relate to that. How about you, Tyree?
Certainly, I echo, I hear what Gina was saying, and yet seeing that I have previous visits, it really helped me put in perspective just the way we take in news and media. As you hear the saying, if it bleeds, it leads. So it can change your perspective to think everything is terrible. And yet I know that there aren't riots every day there. And so having previous visits at other prisons outside of California, I realized. So my real fear was not so much what Jerome said in triggering somebody else, but for me knowing myself, I can be emotionally sensitive. And I remember a visit, that one of my first visits that I did with relatives before, they said, please control your emotions. And that was just for them. So I really was just afraid that I could have an uncontrollable break of some type that would have been inappropriate, to Jerome's point, not just language, but feelings that could come out that would not be appropriate or could trigger some other things. So that was my biggest fear, my own self-control and that projection in that setting to the people we're there to serve. I'm really curious to hear what Charles has to say to that.
Right.
Too.
And that's where we're going right now, Charles. Did you have any fears going in?
Honestly, I didn't have a lot of fears because I felt right at home. This is an environment I'm familiar with. But I'll speak to that concept of fear. I could really relate to how other people would feel about it. Steve, you mentioned early on that process that you have to go through, and there is a document you have to sign before you go into prison that states, I realize that hostages are not recognized for bargaining purposes. And along with what Gina said, the media portrays these incarcerated people as dangerous at times. You see riots, and it does conjure a lot of fear. But I think it's important to realize that the people that are in prison really, really appreciate our presence there, because it makes them feel like people care about them. These are people who have been let down by virtually everyone around them. They feel like they've been let down by their families who probably abuse them, by the system, by their communities. And when they see that people like us actually care enough to go in there, they hold us in high esteem. And it's extremely unlikely anything bad would ever happen.
Right.
Can I speak
I
to that
feel-
real quick, Steve? I
Sure.
just had thought of, I forget, it's not appropriate to say his name, but there was kind of a lead guy. He remember the guy that wore he had the cross and he wore his head wore back. He was like, there was a guy who by hierarchy was just like the lead guy. So when I came in one time, the room wasn't set up. He's like, Gina, what do you need done? What do you need done? Okay. And he just starts telling everybody what to do. I'm like, this guy was telling like the guards, hey, we got it. We need a couple more chairs over there. Bring it over. You know, it was sort of like, wow, this was really cool. So he even said to me, he goes, you need anything? I got you. You know, just I'll look out for you. And I'm like, wow, this is really cool. He had earned the respect by his actions or his behavior or all the extra things he's done. I don't know, Charles, how it works, but you could just tell that, you know, if it was like a military, he was the higher ranking kind of guy. And that was kind of cool to see how everybody respected him, even though he belonged there, even the workers were kind of like respecting him. So I just thought that was really cool to see. And I don't know if that's just how it is, or if that's how it was for us, but that was really cool.
Right. I think I'm thinking of the same person. There was one week where we stayed after.
Yeah.
We watched the video we did.
Right.
A video that he did
Yes.
when we weren't there. He was a great leader. He was a great communicator, and he wanted to be just the best person he could be. And that was one of the interesting relationships we built. How about you? How about if we go to another question now? Jerome, what did you learn over the course of working in San Quentin?
Well, you learn a lot about yourself. I learned that that I could find a suit that wasn't blue or gray. That was the first big challenges. It's like you can't wear blue and you can't wear gray. And if you've ever gone to buy a suit, that's like 3/4 of the suits that you can buy. So there was a big challenge there, but yeah, I learned that I wasn't that much different than some of the men that were in there by background. These were, in the broadest sense, people that I recognized from growing up in my neighborhood, from attending my high school, from relatives. These were people that I felt a kinship with. And as much as I wanted to see the difference. I wanted to see what set me apart. And the more times I went, the more times I realized that it was binary, right? It was bits that flipped here and there in my life, things that went one way that could have gone another, that separated me. Maybe one event, maybe 2 or 3 events in a row where, you know, I got in trouble for fighting in middle school. I got in trouble for being found with a substance in college, and people that could have turned their back on me looked out for me, and I got to move my life forward. And I feel like a lot of the men that I interacted with there had the other experience. When they had the opportunity to have the book thrown at them, it happened. And I came away understanding that there's, even if you have to answer for your mistake. There was no justification for the permanent, kind of the permanent scar that a lot of these men come away from their incarceration experience with. And I might be going too deep, but that was one of my big takeaways.
How about you, Tyree?
Certainly, there is a lot to learn, and I'm just learning, listening to all of you who went there. Some things resonate, and some things are really enlightening and new to me. One of the things I've created over time is a keynote speech that I say, "Journey over the seeds," and I'll just say 3 of these C's really connected to me in this project, and that is community, communication, and connection. It shows that there is a community both inside and out that affects, sometimes supports, sometimes can denigrate these people there, but our community makes a difference. Toastmasters focusing on communication, us having a message and inspiring people to use their voice to speak up, was really reinforced and became powerfully displayed to me by, as we just gave them our Toastmaster experience and skill set for them, and they just took it to another level, and was just really inspiring and uplifting to see them even attempt, because knowing the setting in which you're in versus our regular Toastmasters meeting. But the last seed, and I think for all of us now and for them, I feel like communication is really only effective when it makes connection. And there, because of my previous experience there, I sometimes my emotions didn't allow me to fully absorb the connection. And this go round, I really did. And I just want to add back to your first question. Another reason I did it was, Steve, if you can remember, when we went to the Toastmaster convention, we met a gentleman from another state who was on fire for starting prison clubs. And I remember that guy, and him, along with you asking, really made that happen. And he made a connection with me. So when you asked, I remember that guy, and I just thought this would be a wonderful and insightful new experience for me within Toastmasters to make it a reality for others.
That's right. It was a convention, I think,
in Denver.
Yeah, I'll get to it later. The coughing's starting.
Okay.
So it was a convention in Denver. I think his name was Ray from Oregon, and he had been incarcerated. He was talking to everybody. He was talking to Toastmasters, day-to-day Toastmasters like Tyree and me. He was talking with international presidents. He would just go up to everybody and say, we need to talk about Toastmasters in prison. His passion was unbelievable. The biggest thing I learned was the amount of studying and research that the incarcerated men do. Many of them have become legal experts. They know all about their case, but they know a lot about the criminal justice in general. And it's not just because they had an experience, but because they've gone to prison libraries, or whatever resources are available. They know what they're talking about when it comes to the legal system and their particular case. And then Gina mentioned the management skills, and there's a fine line between using your brilliance in a way that's less than positive and then becoming a CEO for a legitimate company. And the person we're talking about, I have no idea why he was in San Quentin, but if he ever got the chance, he could run a company and he could be successful on the outside because of his communication and his management skills. And he wasn't the only one, but he's the one that we thought about.
Which
Now,
Steve, which a lot of, I think people I at least didn't know is that a lot of the folks there are not going to be there for life, which that was my misconception. One guy was talking about gonna get out and be a chef. Another guy was doing his law degree. Most of the folks in our Toastmasters Speechcraft had aspirations to, and that shocked me because I thought, oh wow, I did not anticipate that. There weren't there for, it was going to be maybe 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, something to that effect. So that's what I think we were so popular and so well received, is that immediately they wanted to apply and get more skills, knowing that they wanted to apply it on the outside. That's what I had no idea about that. Charles can speak more to that, but I didn't know.
Yeah, I apologize for not calling you on, Gina. I'm doing it in a different order every
Oh.
question. I got myself.
Sorry.
What did you learn, Charles?
Yeah, real quick, just to wrap up Gina's thread. Yeah, over 95% of people in the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation will be released one day. Even if you have a life sentence, it doesn't mean you're going to be there the rest of your life, unless you have life without parole. But the vast majority of those individuals will get out. So this is what I learned. There's an old African saying that it takes an entire village to raise a child. I believe it also takes an entire village to rehabilitate people who have been incarcerated as well. So what I learned is that they need all of us. Incarcerated people need people like Steve, Tyree, Gina, and Jerome, so that they know that people care about them. And so they can learn some good marketable skills like communication and leadership. And they also need people like me, who have been to prison, have gotten out and become successful and learned the resilience and other skills necessary to make that transition. So they can look at role models like me and say, hey, if this guy did it, I can do it too.
That perfectly leads us to the next question. And we'll start with Charles on that, because you hit on it. We all brought unique things. We're all unique individuals. And you were incarcerated in San Quentin, and talk to us a little bit about the unique perspective you had and the unique gifts that you brought to the gentleman we worked with.
Yeah, again, I think the best thing I brought to the table was my story. And Steve, Gina, Jerome, as we spoke about before, I went into San Quentin after our Speechcraft and gave workshops and did other things. And whenever I go into San Quentin, I always start by telling people about my credentials. And then I say, hey, I'm going to tell you about my story. And it's a great story, not because it's about me, but because my story is your story. Because if I can get out of this mess, if I can be in prison, get out, and then get a good education, get a good job, be successful, and then come back into prison, every single one of you guys can do the same thing. And it's interesting because the whole theme of this talk today is really about social responsibility and using our skills and talents to do things to help other people in the world. And oftentimes when I go into prisons and I tell my story and I see other people telling their stories, if they've been incarcerated, about how they're doing better now, it really ignites something in people's heads. And it really makes the people who are incarcerated want to get out and pay it forward and help other people too. So for me, that was a really welcome revelation.
Thanks, Charles. Gina, you brought something unique. Can you talk a little bit about what that is?
Are you talking about my notes?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm the feedback queen, and a lot of Toastmasters and 57 know. So I felt it was really important to not just give feedback, but write feedback, and then feedback ended up being kind of personal notes. And I was committed to writing notes to everybody that participated every week. And by golly, they kept those notes. You know, I remember some of the guys would open the folder and there would be, you know, my scribble saying, you know, wonderful job, work on your pauses. I loved your your animation. Your story was really heartfelt. You know, keep up the good work, and we believe in you, and you know, those kinds of things. So I think the power of the written word is really nice. It's something to hold on to, and I spent time, you know, writing it ahead of time, and then of course I'd write feedback during. And a couple of the guys said, you know, how important that was to them. And they would, a couple guys would show up with their Bible or their notes, and you could see the notes were in there. And that just made my heart happy, and just made me feel like I was making a little bit of a difference, you know, in somebody's life.
And Jerome, you brought something unique.
I did. I was a little bit heartbroken at the last session. I wasn't going to be able to attend, and the sensation is now I know what it is because I've become a father since then. But I wanted to be there for people that I invested something in, and so the thing that I came up with, I wrote a letter. I won't share too much about what was in it, but I wanted to let them know that I hadn't forgot about them. That I had taken something valuable away from my experience from interacting with them. I thought it was important to leave them with that. So that was one of the things that I hope it was as beneficial for them as it was for me. I really came away better for having had that experience.
Right. And Tyree.
Yeah, certainly. I have to say what changed me was to reinforce as I've gotten older, because my first visits were in my 20s, was how transformation and hope are really always possible, right? And that now that I've been a Toastmaster for X number of years, I can see that how words make a difference in people's lives. And building the skill for all of us to articulate our own perspectives, our own dreams and insights, along with giving feedback to others in a positive way, helps build understanding and the positive core values that we all need for authentic change. And these guys really made me see that and feel that. And it also reinforces things that are become more and more prevalent for us to realize today. And that is mental health and self-analysis with professional help can really help all of us on our journey, regardless if we're in a physical prison or in one that we've incarcerated ourselves.
I see the green. I've got a couple more questions, but I'm not going to call on everybody. That doesn't mean everybody can't answer. But there's a couple of things we talked about when we were preparing So I'm going to call on the people that really express some things during our preparation calls. And I'll start with this guy. I'll start with Jerome. How did this process change you?
So I touched on it a little earlier. I wanted to see the difference between me and the men that I interacted with in the incarceration setting, and not seeing as much of a difference as I had hoped for initially. That's life shaking, as you could probably imagine. The other thing was I interacted with there were people we mentioned that were lifers that were going to be there for a while. And you have to be careful because you're not supposed to ask them personal questions, but I really, really, really wanted to know what was in it for them. And I was able to glean from some of the probes that I did make that they wanted to affect the community around them, even in the setting. They wanted to, Gina talked about the gentleman that was kind of directing traffic, helping get things set up. They wanted to be a positive influence on the people that came in, on the people that were going out, on the people that they were interacting with, and to be able to impart some benefit. And that's the reason they were engaged. That's the reason they were trying to learn these skills. And I think one of the last thing is that I wanted to believe that some of them are in there for a reason, and undoubtedly some people that are incarcerated are to the benefit of the community. It's not a lot. The thing that I came away with was that we're, as a society, not that much safer for all of the people that are incarcerated, that are in that setting. And that left me a little bit drained because I was like, these people they're locked away, they're separated from society, but it's not like some of them could be benefiting society. They're not making us safer by being locked away. So I wanted people to think about that. As a lot of the talk about incarceration is not necessarily making us safer or better off as a society.
Interesting. Tyree, how did this experience change you?
I think as I just articulated earlier, just reinforce concepts and ideas that, you hear from the outside in that says, hope and transformation. But when you're there with people who are truly been incarcerated for whatever the different circumstances are in it, and I did kind of appreciate that them setting those boundaries, not to, get into personal things and everything. I just know what my story was to the people I was connected with. And all of them have different social backgrounds and the like. But the concept of hope and transformation really is one that I want to observe. I like to be part of that and see that it's a reality, not just for myself, but everybody who is part of my sphere of influence, including all of, not just you, your panel members, but all my fellow Toastmasters.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting perspective. Now, we've got a lot of people on this call and a lot of different interests. Some people would be interested in bringing Speechcraft to San Quentin. Some people have other ways they would like to communicate or like to provide service to the community. And it seemed like all of us in this San Quentin team have other ideas on community service. Gina, can you talk about some of the community service things that you do?
One of the things I've always done, I've been a part of, is this group called Wings, Women in God's Spirit. It's a group of women that meet in the corridor of 680. You don't have to be of any particular church, parish. It's mostly Catholic women, but it expands, and I've invited various women, and I've been asked to speak at that group and bring people into that group. I've also been asked, now that I'm in Wisconsin, to get people to vote, voter registration. Was only here a couple weeks, and somebody tapped me to do that. And I have another gal who's tapped me to help work on some local elections that are happening, and said, you know, would you mind introducing this person, or would you be the person at the door? You know, just things like that, that you walk in. Toastmasters gives you the confidence, the ability to take on any task. So if you're new into town and you say, oh yeah, I'd be interested in helping, boom, you get signed up right away. So I'm going to continue to look for opportunities to serve using my speech skills here, but I'm not afraid to go anywhere, because I've already been to San Quentin, and you know, there's not going to be anything more that's going to be daunting than that. So I think that's part of what this whole call was about, was to just invigorate and get people thinking about what are things you're interested in, or maybe you don't even realize you're interested in. But if somebody were to ask you, be open and ready to say yes, and just go for it. Just like you would stand up and do a table topics, you know, that first time you're a guest at a meeting. That's kind of what we're hoping and encouraging people to do. I don't regret any of it. And like Tyree said, we got to know each other within our group, and we loved that Charles went last, because unlike today's call, he saved the fact that he had been in San Quentin as kind of the climax, kind of the like drop the bomb, and everybody's like, what? And he says his number, what his number was on his thing, and it was just crazy. So we touched those people, and I realized that we do have power as a Toastmaster, just like Jackie demonstrated this morning. You have power to do that wherever you go for whatever cause. So that was what I got out of it, and that's why I'm continuing to look for opportunities.
Great. Thank you, Gina. Charles, what different ways do you serve the community?
So I work with a nonprofit called Defy Ventures, and Defy Ventures sends technology professionals like me into prisons to teach incarcerated people the business, personal development, and job readiness skills they need to start their own businesses, legal businesses, of course. And we also teach them how to get good jobs when they're released. And I do some other work with another organization called Hustle 2.0, which I've been doing a lot of remote work with them. I haven't physically gone into any prisons with them because they serve prisons across the country. So it's a lot harder to go to a prison in Arizona or Alabama. And I also again go into some of these prisons like San Quentin to do workshops, mostly on personal development topics like overcoming limiting beliefs, resilience, and other topics related to life coaching.
Terrific. Thank you. Jerome, Tyree, and we have about 3 minutes, so we're going to do a quick table topic. Jerome, in what ways are you serving the community?
So one of the organizations that I'm involved with is Wardrobe for Opportunity, and it is an employment development service that provides men and women clothes that they can use to interview for jobs, and even starter wardrobes for professional settings. So you can look it up, Wardrobe for Opportunity Oakland, if you want to donate or arrange a clothing drive. Look them up and reach out.
Sounds good. And Tyree, you're a busy person serving the community. Talk a little bit about that.
Yes, I'll try and keep this brief, but yes, I've been super busy. Yesterday, I put on a job fair for 9th and 10th graders to get their first job. And that was really an enthralling and interesting experience. I suggest to everybody to get a chance to not just work with the inmates, but young people too are on the rise. They really appreciate getting I always say for them to have the confidence and the confidence to communicate clearly. And that's what Toastmasters does for them. So I use that. Also, as stated in my intro, I'm the acting pastor of a church that is only meeting online. We're trying to rebuild it because there was a fire. Elmhurst United Methodist Church. You can join me online. If you ask, I'll give you the link. And last but not least is I also support a food pantry in San Francisco. at Temple United Methodist Church.
Sounds good. I'm like Gina. I'm passionate about getting people excited about voting. And there's an organization called Vote Forward. And when we get close to elections, it could be the presidential election, it could be an off-year election, it could even be a random off-year election in a state. What we do is we write handwritten, nonpartisan notes to people that are in the district or the state and just say, hey, this is why I vote. It can't be partisan. We can't say we support this issue or that candidate. Just go out and vote. And I enjoy doing that. And then I like golf. And I belong to an Italian club. Every year we have a golf tournament to raise money for scholarships. We do that every August, late July, early August. This year we raised $14,000. So that was pretty cool. And everybody has a good time. So Charles, Gina, Jerome, Tyree, thank you for being involved in this project. And I'd also like to give a shout out to Randy Ellington, James Jeffley, James Forslund, and Ed Cullen. Ed Cullen's our district director this year, and they all participated and helped make this project successful and meaningful. And I will return control to Elaine, and we can have the Q&A.
That's correct,
Thank you.
Steve. Thank you. Thank you, everyone on the panel. Wonderful, wonderful discussion. Now, everyone in the audience, as you've been paying attention, it's time for short, specific questions with the panel. And Steve, you're going to facilitate the Q&A? Or
I can do that.
I'll ask, okay? I'll facilitate it. All right, first up, Gagan, and then Jackie, please put your hand up. I will call on you in order. Gagan, what is your short, specific question to anyone on the panel?
Very humbling and very inspiring to hear from all of you. So thank you so much for sharing your experience and stories. My question is about during the Speechcraft program, was there a particular aha moment or an unexpected surprise that challenged your preconceptions or provided a new perspective on the program or the inmates that you work with? So if you would like to share that, that would be appreciative.
Who would like to take that one?
I can take that one.
Great, thanks.
One of my aha moments was listening to my new friend give his icebreaker speech. And during that speech, he talked about as a 5-year-old, he wanted his dad's approval, attention, just wanted to be with his dad. And one day they were throwing the football in the yard or by the house or somewhere on the street. I think it was on the street. And he said, we were tossing and it was tossed to my dad and my dad tossed it back to me and I tossed to my dad and I went out for a pass and my uncle had pulled up and my dad had set the football down and jumped in the car. And he said, I knew when that uncle showed up, it wasn't going to be good. That uncle was bad news. And my dad, that was it. He never came back. He was involved in some kind of drug deal or something of that effect. And I'm thinking, this is what his experience was at 5 years old, 6 years old. I mean, that's really shaping your life. Like there wasn't a lot of chance that he was going to have, a different path. And so the aha was, this is all he knew. And he shared with me that he had gotten involved in the same situation as he'd seen modeled for him with his dad and his uncle and all of that. It was kind of just what he knew. And so that kind of really was an aha, a different level of respect for him. And this is the guy that Steve and I were talking about that literally was at that level of speaking that he could win an international contest or be in the top 10. He was that good. And so it's about your circumstance sometimes. And I'm not making excuses for anybody or why they were there, but I really felt like that just, I will never forget that story. Cause I was that kid that played ball with my dad and my dad stayed out there with me and then we'd go home and go inside and have our little dinner and, life was good. So it just was such a stark contrast for somebody who also played ball with her dad.
Okay, thank you, Gina. Thank you, Gagan.
Beautiful.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing.
Let's move on. Jackie, your short specific question for the panel, and feel free to ask a specific person if you feel like you need to.
I think my question is for Steve, and it's very short and specific. Why no blue and no orange is the first question, and then I've got another quick one after that.
Okay, could you please repeat the first one?
Why can you not wear blue or orange?
Well, that's a good question. Well, the prisoners wear certain colors, and I think some of the correction officers wear certain colors, and because of that, they didn't want to risk anybody blending in.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, so that was the main thing.
Thank you. I wondered whether, because I work with color psychology, and I wondered if there was a psychology around the no blue or the orange, but I get that.
Yeah,
My second
it was
question-
crazy with me because I wear blue and gray all the time. I've got a gray sweater on now. I've got blue pants on now, and it took a lot of thought to get dressed every Tuesday. And you had one more?
Yeah, very quick question. I'm relatively new to Toastmasters, but the question is to everybody or anybody really, is it possible for them to have a Toastmasters group, club in the prison and to function in Toastmasters generally, or can they only do the Speechcraft?
There are regular prison clubs, and some have been very successful. There's a past international president in Illinois, and his name escapes me right now, but he's an expert in prison clubs. But there have been successful. John Greiner, that's exactly right. There are some really good clubs. There's also gavel clubs, and gavel clubs, you can put a gavel club in a prison, you can put a gavel club in a high school, and different types of organizations. We chose Speechcraft because that seemed to work for us. It's a little bit harder now, and at some point I'd like to put this program back together, but we weren't allowed to bring any internet material in, and Speechcraft has gone completely online now. And we were fortunate enough to do it when it was just the manuals and we can carry any paperwork we wanted in. So as we get started again, and I believe it's going to happen, we'd have to come up with a idea on how we do things online. And there may be a way to do it. And it's the same with pathways. I don't know how they do pathways online, but things can be printed. Right.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Steve. Appreciate your answer. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Jackie. Okay, we have time for one more question. Eleanor, what is your short, specific question?
I don't have a question. I have a comment, and that is bravo to all of you. I felt that this was not only educational, but each of your stories had huge meaning and was very well articulated. I want to thank you all for educating me on something I had no idea about. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You know, we have one more question. I wondered, did you meet any of the people that were in prison in the program? Did you ever meet any of them after they got out?
I haven't. It was interesting because during the first session, somebody was released, and usually in a Toastmasters function or any organization you belong to, when somebody leaves, it's, oh boy, we're sorry, we're going to miss you, the whole thing. But when somebody leaves a Speechcraft program in a prison, it's positive. He got released. And this was one gentleman, and I can't remember specifics about him, but it was one gentleman that we thought had a good chance of being successful. And the only thing I know about him is he was from Southern California, but none of us met anybody outside the program.
COVID really kind of interrupted us with that.
We got shut down. We got shut down by COVID. We were 6 weeks into an 8-week program, and on March 17th, 2020,
Right.
we had session number 7, and it was March 17th when we went into shelter in place for COVID. And I've got more to say on that later, but I'm going to
That's
wait till
unfortunate.
at
All
the
right,
end of
well,
the meeting.
Thank you, Steve. I'm sorry, we're out of time. Dinesh Kumar, if you could just type your question in the chat or follow up with one of the panelists, I'm sure they'll be happy to. But we're up against it, and now it's time for last words linger from our panel. So, Steve, actually, I think it's Charles who's going to do this.
Charles is our cleanup hitter.
Charles, take it away, sir.
All right, thank you. How much time do I have? Just curious.
You have 5 to 7.
7 minutes?
Yes.
All right. So I'll tell you just a little bit about the backstory of my life and how that coalesced into learning about the importance of social responsibility and really taking our gifts and talents outside of Toastmasters and into the real world. And I'll pose a question because I really like that question that Jackie said earlier. You know, what is possible? And the question I want to pose to everybody today is, if you died today, how did you make a positive difference in this world? Keep that question in the back of your mind. So when I got out of prison and eventually got my life back together, I got a great education. I started working in technology, and I was paying taxes, staying out of trouble, and living what most people would call the American dream. And you'd think I'd be really happy at this point, but I wasn't, because I wasn't really living an authentic, purposeful life. I wasn't living a life really aligned with my core values and my true purpose. I liked working with the smart people in tech. I liked the money. I liked the lifestyle that it afforded, but I wasn't really doing something authentic and meaningful. And then in 2014, I applied for a job at a local bank, got the job offer, accepted, and 1 week later, the bank's HR department called and said, hey, you can't work here because of your felony criminal record. I thought, wow. If this is happening to someone who has 12 years of experience in tech, a master's degree, and has been out of prison 16 years, what challenges are the average people going to face? And that's when I started doing the volunteer work with Defy Ventures. That's when I started going back into prison. And for me, that was really life-changing, because when I go back into prison and I look at these guys' faces, I see myself, because I know how it feels to be in prison, to feel like you're a failure and to feel like you have no hope. So going back in and helping these guys, educating them and giving them a sense of hope really, really brought me happiness and authenticity. And that is really what social responsibility is about. It's about paying it forward, helping other people, and doing something that's authentic to you. So I asked myself that question, you know, if I died today, how did I make a positive difference in this world? And when I first thought about the answer to that question, I thought a lot about my mom, that amazing woman that did her best to raise me. And sadly, she died when I was in prison. My mom was really that beacon of love and compassion. She was a motel manager, and she would always help people who were struggling. She would hide sex workers who were being beaten by their pimps. She would let families stay at the motel for an extra week or two if they ran out of money. And when she died, that beacon of love and compassion was extinguished. I felt a lot of shame throughout the years because I felt like I let my mom down by just getting arrested, going to prison, and not being there for her during her final days in this world. And I felt a lot of shame because she wasn't there to see me accomplish a lot of great things when I got out of prison. She didn't see me get my bachelor's degree. She wasn't there to celebrate with me when I got my first tech job. She didn't see me get my graduate degree. She didn't see me get married. Okay, I got divorced later anyway, so maybe it's good she wasn't there then. We grew up in motels in a trailer park, And she would have loved to see me buy my first house. If she were alive today, sure, she would be proud of the degrees, the tech jobs, and the house. But she would be more proud to see who I had become. She would be more proud to see that I had become that beacon of love and compassion, and that I'm continuing that journey of compassion that she started. So again, I would like to ask all of you, now that you've heard my story, my journey, if you died today, how did you make a positive difference in this world? And if you believe you've not yet made that difference you want to make, it is never too late to begin helping people who are struggling. Figure out who needs your help in this world. Maybe you can help someone who's homeless, or someone who's been struggling with mental issues, the same ones you struggled with. Maybe you can be like Jackie and help people who are struggling with dementia, or help the caregivers who are helping those people. Maybe you can be like me, Steve, Tyree, Jerome, and Gina, and help people who are in prison. But Toastmasters has given all of us a very unique skill set. It's given us the ability to lead. It's given us the ability to really communicate ideas effectively, to educate people, and to inspire people to do things. So figure out what the world needs from you, because I can guarantee you the world needs you to become that beacon of love and compassion. So be that beacon so you can live a happy and purposeful life. Madam Toastmaster, back to you.
Fantastic.